Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Thrive, Not Just Survive. I'm your host, Nasira Jamal. And before we begin, because I know the topic that I'm going to talk about today is a topic that is very, very common, not just now, but I think just in people's lives. This is a very important subject and also something that people need strategies for. So I'm excited for that. But first, I just wanted to welcome you, and I want to thank you for all of your comments and for following me and the tribes that I'm bringing in terms of different entrepreneurs. I hope that what you're learning and what you're seeing is something that's empowering, something that's positive, and something that's helping you, because that's the goal of my broadcast, is to ensure that I'm able to bring information to you that can help you. The other objective of this show is to showcase entrepreneurs who are making a difference, who are following their passions, and for those who are really out there to make impact. I am so committed to showcasing these amazing women that come on my show because they are sharing their genius with us. And so today I am so very excited to welcome Leslie on my show. Leslie is actually from the West Coast, and I met her through a networking group, but I was so blessed to have met her because she's doing something that is helping people get out of stress. And she's going to walk us through it. So let's begin this conversation. But it's about actually how do we deal with stress and what are the strategies we can implement into our lives to have better days. So let's bring Leslie on so we can get this conversation started. Hey, Leslie, welcome aboard. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know you're out in the West Coast, so we're a little bit of a time difference. It's quite early in the morning there. So I want to thank you for, making some time for joining me and sharing your wisdom with our group. So what I wanted to first ask you, before we even start on your genius, is just tell us how you got to doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you. It actually started kind of almost more indirectly when a few years ago I had to get my gallbladder out because I passed a stone and they found lots more in there. And after recovering kind of fully from that, I realized I just felt calmer in a lot of ways. And I wanted to keep going with that. And I say indirectly because after researching more about the gallbladder, I realized there was like some hormonal components. And I realized that before that, I would get into what I call a stress spiral, where if something didn't go as planned, I would just start like freaking out and worrying about like how things were lining up. And I'd been doing that for years. And I was always like 10 steps ahead and wondering like what could go wrong and how can I plan for that instead of just like breathing and living in the moment. Mm-hmm. So when things kind of went back to like a balance in my body, I was like, okay, well, how can I keep this going? And the stress management kind of came from that. It was like, well, I'm calm now. What am I doing that's different? And how can I keep doing this? And so I started with, also for my kids' sake too, because they were really young at the time. And I'm like, I can't have them seeing me freak out just because something didn't go as planned. Like, it happens, life happens. So I just started seeing what like other entrepreneurs were doing when, they would get stressed. And I mean, I work in the massage therapy industry, so self-care and yoga and a lot of those things go hand in hand, and how people manage their stress based on that. And so I just started looking up like what other people do. How do they have so much on their plate and not freak out? And I just kind of took off from there, and a lot of inner work over the last 4 years. And it just kind of came. I was like, well, if I can do this, how can I help other people do it? Because I'm friends with a lot of the moms now, like through school, and they're all talking about stress. I'm like, hey, I went through that. I can help this. So I just wanted to find it, because stress is so prevalent in our world to the point where it's normalized. Like everyone talks about being stressed, but no one knows how to deal with it.
Right. And I think the thing about stress is that if you continually live in that stress mode, your body begins to show signs of physical illness, disease. And there's so much research done on how stress affects us, even though initially it may just seem like we're freaking out, right? Like it may just feel like we're losing control, but the body goes into a flight or a flee kind of a situation. But also, if it's not dealt with, or if we don't have strategies in place, you can actually get disease from it, right? So this is something that's such an important thing, especially now with COVID. I find people are, finding it more stressful because different situations are coming up. Like the kids are home, you're working from home, or you're laid off and you're worried about what's to come next. So can you kind of guide us through, like, if you had some strategies that you would sort of say to people, if you're getting into that spiral of, oh my God, what's next? Or I'm worried about what you can't control, what would you say?
So the first most important step that's worked for me is, because when you're in the moment of stress, you can't see anything else. And so you need to detach from that. So I went through a bunch of different techniques for like breathing exercises. And the biggest one that worked for me to detach kind of completely from the moment was to take like a literal step back, no matter where I am, kind of thing. Like just a literal step back, close my eyes, and then take a deep breath in for like 5 to 6 counts, and then let it out even slower, like up to 8, 9 counts. And by doing that, just focusing on the breathing, having my eyes closed so I can't see what else is going, it actually allowed me to like actually take a step back and go, wait a minute, I don't need to freak out about this. There's other things I can do. And so it's just kind of a like almost like a moment of clarity. So yeah, the biggest thing would be to just like take that step back and detach just for a moment, just so that you get away from the situation.
It's almost like doing a reset, right? Like you're consciously stopping. And when you do this, taking a step back, I use this technique too, is actually consciously you are detaching physically, right? So because you're taking a physical step back, it allows you to connect the dots of I'm stepping back from this. And so you can have that 5 seconds of take a deep breath and get oxygen into your body, because that's one thing I find under stress is we're breathing very shallow. And so it's actually, making us even more tense, right? Because we don't have enough oxygen. So that's an amazing thing. Like if we can just take those sort of 5 seconds to step back. Now, I know that, you do a lot of work with, I'm thinking probably a lot more moms with young children. Is that true?
That's kind of who I started with. Stress affects everybody, but that was kind of my target group to begin with, because it was people I could relate to, and they're usually the ones that talk about stress the most and are probably the ones that could use it the least, because they've already got so much to look after.
Exactly. So I think, I want to sort of touch on that when you said, that's your target audience. So I'm just going to shift a little bit of our conversation, because a lot of people here that follow me, have talked about entrepreneurship, or they're just starting their entrepreneurial journey. And it's really important before you even sort of do the content of what that genius is, your genius of what you're going to do or the problem you're going to solve, is to know the problem, but who are you solving it for? Because that really then brings a lot more clarity. Otherwise, if you don't have this, actually your business becomes another source of stress, because you're kind of shooting in all different directions, right? So even as an entrepreneur, the idea is to limit our stress and to be able to focus somewhere where, not that stress doesn't happen. I mean, let's be honest, right? As an entrepreneur, there are many different factors in running a business, right? And so stress is going to show up. So one thing is, first, to be very clear of the problem you're solving and for who. Like, what is that audience, right? Because the way you're teaching it or the things you're teaching can really apply to everybody. But if you focus on this group of people, of moms with young children, let's say, then you're really focused. And the other people, if they need help, will come anyways. But so that's one important, I think, thing that people that are doing the entrepreneurial journey should really focus on. So the other thing is to not just know about the strategies, right? Like you can teach them, but the very key component of success is to start implementing it, right? So how would you suggest, like for somebody that is like completely stressed out, and yes, they can, listen to this and say, oh, that makes sense. I can back up. I can do that. How do you
Mhm.
suggest actually implementing into your routine so that it becomes more robust, like almost like a habitual thing?
So, I mean, finding people always talk about they can't find the time. I'm of the belief that you need to make the time and you need to make it non-negotiable. And this is kind of the root of a lot of the stress management techniques, where if you're going to commit to it, you have to commit to it fully. And if that means waking up 15 minutes earlier each day, which I know is hard, I've been down that track, but if you're going to look after yourself, you have to create that time for yourself and you have to make it a non negotiable period of time. And to get started, I would say make it a routine, a set time every day, and like even set an alarm for it and basically just like make it so that nothing happens in that time. If it's the same time every day, the same amount of time every day, you do it for at least
Yeah.
21 days because that's how long it takes the brain to make a habit. It starts to become more second nature. And then if people see that you're committing to this period of time and nothing else can happen there, they're more likely to leave you alone for it as well, because there's just kind of that feeling of, ooh, like they need that time for this and we're just gonna like let them have it because they're respecting themselves enough to say don't bug me.
Right. Well, you know what? I
um
think that's the key,
yeah.
right? Like in terms of setting boundaries, it's for all of us
Mhm,
in terms of, we're business women, we're mothers, we're
mhm.
wives. There's a lot of stuff that it calls us, right, in different
Yeah.
directions. But if we don't
Mhm.
have boundaries that are set up, it's easy to get pulled in all of these different directions. And at the end
Yes,
of
it
the
is.
day,
Yeah.
you're really no good to anybody, right? And I've always
Right.
said, I teach this, like, fill your cup up first before you
Yes.
start filling other people, right? It's like the analogy of, when you're on a plane, right? And they say, if there's an emergency, put your oxygen mask on first
Yeah.
before you help someone else or your child, because then you'll be in a better position to help them.
Mhm.
And so I think this is a
Yeah.
really key point, is to make it a non-negotiable, put it in your
Mhm.
calendar and have those clear boundaries that are set up so
Mhm.
people know how to conduct themselves with
Mhm.
you during those times. And I think especially with young children, they,
Yeah.
they really do understand, right? They understand if I'm taking, mommy has this 15 minutes, this is what I'm going to do. And you can do this while I'm doing this.
Mhm.
It also teaches
Yeah.
them stress management or time management,
Mhm.
right? It gives them that learning. So I think it's a two-way win,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And then they can also see that, mommy or daddy is looking after themselves and this is obviously something important that I
Exactly.
need to do for
Exactly.
myself as well.
Exactly. And I don't mean just mommies. There's
Oh
mommies.
yeah, no, I get it.
You know what I mean? I should
Yeah.
say that to my audience too. I always talk about mothers, but parents in general
Yeah.
need to have some of these boundaries set so that they can serve themselves. So this is what we're talking about in terms of, this is self-care, right? So this is one of
Mhm.
those tools that is part of stress management, is to have time cut out so you can do things that can empower you, enliven you, whether that's, what would you say? Like, I know for me, meditation is a really big portion
Mhm.
of how I do that. In terms of the people you've worked with, what kind of self-care things have they put into place that helps them?
So meditation's been a big one for sure. Like even if it's just like a 5-minute thing in the morning, just to kind of like ground yourself for the day. Um, Having that moment to, drink your morning cup of coffee or tea. Um, Reading in the morning. A lot of people really like kind of that, like, you know, if it's warm outside, sitting out watching the sunrise while you're reading a book. Or even just like a hot soak at night, like at the end of the day, and just like letting, if you've got Epsom salts, throw that in, or if you've got a diffuser with a favorite scent, just kind of like putting yourself in that moment of total relaxation, you know, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Right.
Those are kind of the more popular ones.
Yeah. And I guess that's just about, finding what works for you, what makes
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
right, feel amazing, what gives you that
Hmm.
time where you can really connect to who you are, or what you need. And for
Hmm.
different people, it's different things. And for timing wise, depending on how much time you have, I think that all can be changed. The whole idea is to be aware of what you need and take the time to do it. And it's a non-negotiable, which I think is really key. And I find that if it's in my schedule, like if I've actually on my Google Calendar, it actually says that. And it's, you know, and I vary it with what I call it, Nasira time, me time, meditation, you know, schedule, whatever that is, it's actually in my calendar so that I commit to it, just like as if it was a client of mine. So what I want to talk about now is I think the genius, like, you know, for you tapped into your genius, because typically I find the genius comes up when you've been through that problem. And now you're on the other side saying, oh my God, I can actually take what I've learned to help others, which is a key component, right? So can you tell me a little bit about the Hot Mess Mama, and what do you do and how do you conduct it so that you are actually helping people that are in your tribe?
So the biggest thing that that I found helpful anyway was to realize, you know, stress happens, but it doesn't have to be a permanent state. It's supposed to be something temporary. So in order to get out from that, you know, acknowledge that things aren't always going to be perfect, that you're going to be stressed, hence the hot mess part of it. But I obviously couldn't do this in the website URL, but the mess part is in brackets, meaning that it's supposed to be like a temporary thing. So, you know, you can be like hot in terms of like passionate, or, you know, fitness, or just how you're feeling emotionally, like not necessarily all about looks, but just like, you know, inside, like, you know, like I said, passionate and, you know, ready to go. And then the mess part, it's normal to kind of feel like messy and out of sorts, but it doesn't have to be your complete 100% reality. So it's just, you know, acknowledging that it happens, but then learning that you can move away from it. It doesn't have to define you.
That's, you know what, and I think that's the whole thing, right? What is defining us, like these subconscious or these inner beliefs that we have, right? That that's what you believe, like foundationally, then it's going to show up in your life, right? In different ways, it's going to show up. But if we can really know, and I love what that you said, you know, it's temporary, like nothing is permanent, right? So even the stress part is not permanent. It's just about finding a way to deal with it while it's happening, and then, you know, move on to the next thing. So what do you like, what kind of, I know now we probably, in terms of COVID-19, a lot of shifts and pivots had to happen with the business, right? So how have you, do you have an online program? How do you help people still get access to the information and to the help?
So there's definitely some online programs. I've been creating videos and modules, which are available up on my website. I do have a couple kind of in the mix right now that I'm working on, which are, I want to say they're almost like a little bit deeper. Like we get deeper into the whole, like, it's not a permanent thing. It's temporary. Don't let it define you. Here's how. A little more specific on like some of the morning rituals and things that I do to not be so stressed through the day. And then I'm also offering a free strategy call, which, you know, we can get set up, and then I can basically just find out like what's stressing you, why, what's defining you to create the stress, and kind of go from there, offer like tips and techniques that I've used. And then, you know, see what we can do about making sure that stress isn't compounding itself.
Right. And I think that's important, right? Like when you talk to for one, like when you talk to somebody, and I love that you can actually kind of define what's going on. You almost like peeling back the layers of the onion, right? Because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you yourself, or me myself, wouldn't be able to see it as objectively as when you're telling somebody else and they're seeing beyond just the words, right? The words are there, but you're actually pulling up from the tone of the voice and the way the person is even saying those sentences, is giving you an idea of where they're coming from and why it is at that level of, where it's really stressing them out. So that, I think the importance of an insight call is to really get another person to hear it and then be able to dissect the actual information. And when sometimes I find when I do my calls with my clients is when I say it back to them, it just almost like they're like, oh my gosh, like, yes, that's exactly how I'm feeling, or that's exactly what's happening. Because again, the objectivity from another person allows you to have more clarity. So I think that's really an amazing thing. So as we end our conversation, is there something that you could tell our audience, like moving forward? It's Monday. What would you suggest as committing for this week? What can they do to really start having that self-care and the whole idea of stress management?
So the game changer with me, sorry. The game changer for me was having a morning, I don't know if I want to call like a morning ritual, a morning thing where just, like I said, it was non-negotiable. So I wake up, I try to wake up at the same time every day, and I'll have my coffee, I do my reading, I might get my fitness in at that same time. And basically I just created a time of about an hour to an hour and a half. It's for me. It's not for anybody else. It's for me, and everything else can wait until I'm kind of ready. And that time is, like I said, non-negotiable. Like, even if my kids wake up early, they're old enough now, they can make their own breakfast. It's like, this is my me time. This is my bubble. You're just going to wait for me to finish, and then I am ready for you. I'm ready to take on the day. So it might take some time to find what works for you, because not everyone's a coffee drinker. Not everyone likes reading, but find, two to three things that you enjoy doing that help you feel renewed or ready to take on the day, and start your day with that. And like I said, make it non-negotiable. Like, nobody's allowed to come and disrupt that space for you.
I think
do it every day.
And as you say that, it just brings me to something that when I first started to even realize how important self-care is, I thought I was feeling guilty, like, oh my gosh, I'm taking away from my son, and he was younger at the time. So it was like, oh my gosh, how can I do this? It was more like I felt selfish, right? And then as I really did all of the inner work and realized, oh my gosh, I can be a better mom when I show up after I do this. And actually, it's better for him that I am in this position of feeling, more recharged, right? So that whole guilt factor may come up for people. And I think people just have to push past it, right? To say, yes, you know what? I know this is not what I'm used to doing, but it's best for me to do this so I can show up for the people that need me. So thank you so much for sharing your insight and your genius with my group. I'm going to definitely be using some of your other techniques, and as your programs come out, please do let me know so that I can share them out. I know you're working on it, and I think they're going to be awesome. So thank you so much. I want to just wish you a wonderful week, and I hope the rain stops over there for you.
Yeah, we're supposed to get it all week, but we'll see how it goes.
So enjoy your time. Thank you again for joining me. I'll see you soon. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining and for the comments, Julie and Anne, and all the people that even watch it on replay. I get messages all the time of how beneficial the ladies that are coming on and sharing their gifts with us, how beneficial it's been in people's lives. So I want to just thank you for your support. And if you feel like you need to get a hold of me, just message me. If you want to get a hold of Leslie, her website's on there. You can check out her programs. She'll be updating her website as she adds these new things. And just reach out. This is how we support each other, is by reaching out and connecting. So wishing you a wonderful, happy week. I will see you again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Be kind to yourself and to others.